He was the precursor to, and in many ways the founder, of the spectralist school of composers. I'm the Classical Nerd, and today we're talking about Horațiu Rădulescu. Radulescu was born in the Romanian capital of Bucharest in 1942. His musical training came at the Bucharest Academy of Music, where his violin and compositional training shaded strongly towards the avant-garde of Europe at the time. He graduated in 1969 after a grueling slate of 55 exams in 6 years, and thereafter moved to Paris, but in order to do so he had to sneak and lie his way out of the country. Paris had long been considered a center for new music, especially in Europe, and it was there that he became known as a spectralist composer. Spectralism as a concept was given a grandiose, dense, and really pretentious-sounding explanation by Radulescu himself, but his idea was very simple. Simply dispense with all other parts of music and instead focus on constant fluctuation of sounds based on the natural overtones of any given note. This often involved radical retuning of string instruments, so that each string was a specific, very high partial of an overall underlying tone. Everything is just a very complex overtone series, if you will. He felt as if he really had to choose this path, because it followed natural math and Pythagorean logic. The French composers who would take up the spectralist banner did so by taking small sounds, individual sounds of really anything, usually musical notes, and then trying to recreate them as best as possible by slowing them down and then orchestrating that sound. But it is Radulescu who must be given the idea of spectralism in the first place, and he managed to stay wholly separate and wholly unique from all of the other spectralists. He said that his style was based around what he called self-generative functions, and that all of the best melodies that humanity had ever devised, even going back to the best melodies of J.S. Bach, were based around these self-generative functions, things that he put to paper. Although Romanian expatriates made up a large contingent in Parisian circles, Radulescu swore himself away from them so he could focus entirely on his music. Radulescu was prone to a sense of mysticism, which endeared him to the French composer Olivier Messiaen. However, this kept him distant from almost all of his other compositional peers, including everyone who, along with him, attended new music courses in Darmstadt, Germany. This is not really that much of a surprise, considering that Radulescu himself was as quick to praise his colleagues as to denounce them, while his peers saw themselves as working in a rarefied, high-end discipline where the adulation of a listening audience was at best ignored and at worst actively shunned. Radulescu wanted his music to be ritualistic in nature, and beautiful, to him at least, as sort of a counterpart to all of the violence and what he saw as a glorification of ugliness in the music of the composers who had lived through World War II. As he grew older, he increasingly returned to his Romanian roots, incorporating Romanian folk music into his style along with spectralism to create an invigorating style of modernism that was essentially all his own. One of Radulescu's musical inventions was something he referred to as a sound icon. He took a grand piano, took its lid off, and tilted it up on its side so that the strings were easily accessible for a musician to pluck and strum and even bow. This took the string piano techniques, pioneered by Henry Cowell, John Cage, and George Crumb, to a logical and timbrally beautiful conclusion. On the surface, he didn't really seem to care at all about the practicality of performance. There are pieces in his catalog for 9 orchestras, or for 40 flutes. But despite this, he never really enjoyed talking about the mystical titles or the inspirations behind his pieces, focusing instead on, amazingly enough, the practicality of performance. Although his notation doesn't often show it, he was precise in what he wanted out of his musicians and the spaces in which they performed, which he saw as an integral part to the music itself. In the later years of his life, he was behind new recordings of his music released on a yearly basis, and insisted contractually that he be there for all rehearsals and recording sessions. His scores don't make that much sense without him acting as an interpreter. The trouble behind a lack of adequate performance notes meant that after Radulescu's death, there was no one left to interpret these weird symbols, and it's only within the past couple of years that musicians have really been ready to come back to his music. It's taken them that long to just interpret it, I suppose. He enjoyed an eclectic and wide variety of composers that ranged from Josquin Desprez to Iannis Xenakis, who don't have much in common except that they were members of the same species. He disregarded Mahler and Shostakovich, yet admired Claudio Monteverdi and Nashville blues. In general, he thought that music was akin to a gigantic fresco, where techniques served to illuminate beauty. While he held theoretical concepts in high regard, he dispensed with any music that he considered too theoretical. Music, to him, was a quest for the eternal. "I'm writing for the future," Radulescu once said. "I'm writing for posterity."